Thank you, Mary Alice. Just to give you a word, first of all, let me say how thrilled I am that you have made it here today and weathering the storm. A couple of things are going to happen here today. One of the things that we wanted to do as I began to work with Mary Alice Davis on her situation and try to get her plight out to people around the country is I think that there's a great need for some kind of a property rights movement in Maine, and I thought if we could use her situation to help get that established, then that's what we should do. At the same time, I began to work with several people around the country. The fact of the matter is that the situation that you're facing here in Maine, that Mary Alice is facing, is happening in every city in this country, in every rural area in this country, and people are confused, people are not sure about where they're going with it all and what to do about it. And so we began to work together, several of us, to bring the message, the fact that there is a connection between the sustainable development policies, the environmental policies, and education. A lot of people don't understand. And we began to pull all this together, and what we thought we would do is create a DVD to be as a tool for activists and get it out to as many people as we could so they could use it as programming, they could use it as recruitment tools, they could get it in front of elected officials to begin to spread the message of what's happening. You know, Thomas Paine put out a pamphlet in 1775 called the Common Sense, and this was the first time that the argument for independence was told to the American people in a very easy-to-read, understandable way. And that began to be read by everybody in the country, every tavern, every street corner, every living room. People were reading Common Sense, and this drove the Continental Congress to work for independence. We thought that maybe what we could create is a modern-day Common Sense using modern technology, a DVD. Now, let me begin by saying this. All of us are aware that life in America has changed over the past few decades. Life is getting harder. There seems to be no end to the dire predictions of collapse and impending doom. We are told that the human race is using up the Earth's natural resources at an alarming rate, and that natural Armageddon is our destiny unless we can make massive sacrifices to our lifestyle. Using this excuse, governments, from your local city councils to the United Nations, are busy creating theories and policies designed to restructure our society, controlling development while locking away land and natural resources. And we feel great stress and even injustice at their restructuring, as their restructuring interferes with the documents and the legal institutions on which our government was founded. New policies such as smart growth, cluster development, conservation easements, sustainable development, Agenda 21, biosphere reserves, and even historic preservation challenge the ideas of private property rights, individual liberty, and free enterprise. The questions all Americans must ask are these. Is the theory of natural Armageddon true? And is the transformation of our society necessary? Or is it all just being used as an excuse to impose an oppressive political power structure that destroys private property, individual initiative, and the rule of law? Those of us speaking to you today believe the latter is true. Today it is our purpose to show you how and why we think the only result of that transformation can be the destruction of a free society through the establishment of an oppressive ecoligarchy that will rule and regulate our every move. In short, we believe we are in the midst of a war of ideas, philosophy, and values, ultimately to decide whether man will live controlled or free. And you all have a stake in getting to the facts and getting it right, because in the end, it is your liberty in the balance. Now, I would like to introduce to you our first speaker today, Michael Shaw. Michael Shaw is from Santa Cruz, California, a community that stands at ground zero in the transformation of America. That community has been implementing smart growth and sustainable development land use policies longer than any in America. If you want to know what America will look like in 10 years under these policies, go to Santa Cruz. In the mid-1990s, Michael sat on the Santa Cruz local UN Agenda 21 committees as the community began to create the sustainable structure that now subjugates Santa Cruz today. Michael is a property owner and a businessman and an abundance ecologist. A few decades ago, he purchased 75 acres of coastal property where he hoped to build a home. He soon found out that such a common American dream was now virtually impossible in sustainable Santa Cruz. So Michael took the weed-infested land that the environmentalists called natural, and he turned it into a native plant wonderland he now calls Liberty Garden. It now stands as an example of how private property provides far better stewardship of the earth than does government control. Native species now flourish at Liberty Gardens that are literally unknown anywhere else in California. Today, Michael comes to us as a founding participant of Freedom 21 Santa Cruz, dedicated to the constitutional administration of government and the essential importance private property serves in guaranteeing our liberties. Please welcome Michael Shaw.
The issue that has faced society since the beginning of time has been a very simple question. That issue is, who decides? Who decides the terms of your life? Is it you, the individual, or is it the state? If we're to resolve that that question is answered, that the individual decides the terms of one's life, that society must come to understand that to respect the dignity of human life requires respecting the private property of another. These ideas are not new to humankind. They're as old as the Ten Commandments, with the prohibitions against stealing and coveting the property of another. But they came to societal fruition with the foundation of America and the constitutional provisions that guide and govern this country. It was in those institutions that the concept of self-governance was understood to be a necessary prerequisite to leading a life that is one's own. Today, Americans know that something is wrong. What we need to do is understand where those problems originate. But to do so, we need to start at the beginning, with an understanding of liberty itself. You see, liberty presumes that the government powers must be strictly limited in scope and that the law be applied equally to each citizen. In other words, for liberty to survive, governmental favoritism must be eliminated. Freedom means that we can each act on our own authority, limited by our legal responsibility not to infringe on the equal rights of another, and the moral and social responsibility to respect the dignity and the property of others. You see, in a free society, and only in a free society, are human beings able to develop their own conscience. Nurtured in a family environment, people can begin to become who they are, first by building a conscience, developing their personality, and building their own character. And it is when a conscience has been developed that people are free to express themselves and free to associate with whom they choose. And of course, the freedom to associate and the freedom to express require a natural freedom to trade with others without the use of force